25 years ago this month, Ontario was in a very precarious place. Interest rates were too high, unemployment was too high, the provincial budget deficit was too high. The government of the day had numerous options to combat the dire economic circumstances, and those options ranged from bad to awful to even worse. Bob Rae was premier, and his government opted for something very different and very controversial. It was called the social contract. And Ontario's 21st Premier joins us now to review the events of a quarter century ago. You ready to walk down memory lane here?
Well, yeah, I'm ready.
You're ready, okay. We've sort of set it up that the economy that you were facing was horrendous, and you had a kind of a three-legged stool, as I recall the description. You were going to raise taxes some, you were going to cut spending some, and the third leg of this stool was the social contract. What was the idea?
Well, the other key element in what we were trying to do, and what we did, in fact, was to maintain investment in things like housing and basic infrastructure like transportation. We had a series of subway lines under construction, which were obliterated by the next government.
All those holes were filled in, if I recall.
They were all filled in. And we were very determined to save as much as we could, to save jobs, to save services, and to rein in spending in the most effective way. And what I think everybody needs to remember is that most of what Ontario spends is wages. Most of the money that we spend, most of the budget of the province goes to teachers and doctors and policemen and firefighters and
university professors and everything. Yep.
Everybody working in the broader public sector and for the government itself.
So if you want to save money, that's where you got to go.
Well, it's the most effective way to go. So yes, we decided that we needed to try something quite different, but we also decided on a process of consultation, which was quite substantial, starting in the fall, in the spring of '93, and then working its way through until we reached the conclusion that we reached.
You had all the unions from the public sector around the table in the hopes that they would voluntarily negotiate savings.
Well, we started out with a conference, which I remember very well, where we basically laid out in front of the entire leadership of the public sector, university presidents, union leaders, hospital presidents, heads of medical associations, everybody, and just said, here's where we are. Actually, by that point, the economy was starting to rebound. The economy had gone into the tank between 89, 90, 91, 92. 93, we were bouncing back economically, but the revenues were not coming back the extent to which we wanted them to. So we felt we had to take more serious action if we were going to avoid major problems for the Ontario public sector.
Do you recall whose idea it was to say to people, you take 12 unpaid days off from work. We're not going to fire anybody. Just take 12 unpaid days off from work. We'll save $2 billion and we'll save tens of thousands of jobs.
Well, actually, I don't. If you say do it, I remember one specific person. No, I know. Actually, I don't, because I think it was the product of a long period of discussion. We'd actually had a number of meetings with the trade union leadership of the province over a long period of time, because the private sector had gone through their own social contract, which was really quite brutal. We saw lots of people losing their jobs. We had to work hard to save jobs. So the formula that we created in Kapuskasing, where we saved all those jobs, in the steel industry, where we saved a lot of jobs, all throughout a lot of restructurings that we did, was to say to the unions, you're going to have to take less, and if there's an upside, you'll get the upside. In the case of the workers in Spruce Falls, they took some shares in the company, and actually they did very well out of it. But basically, our view was the private sector workers had taken a hit, and taken a major hit. We didn't see how we could go forward without, frankly, sharing some of the pain.
And the public sector had kind of been protected from a lot of the worst of the recession.
I mean, I've told this anecdote before, but as you know, I spent quite a lot of time in the summer in Eastern Ontario, and in the little town where we have our cottage, or near our cottage, I was walking down the street and a guy stopped me and said, Bob, come over here. And I went over to see him, and he said, you know who makes all the money in this town? I said, no. He says, the hydro worker, the teacher, the hospital worker, None of them have been touched. We're the only ones who are paying the price. And I sort of said to him, look, they're doing important work and da-da-da. And I thought about, it is hard to not, in this economy that we were in, if you want to save the jobs, there's two things. There really is a very simple choice. And Mr. Harris made the different choice when he made this choice. He decided to say, well, we're just going to pay less. We're going to fire people.
Smaller public service.
We're going to have a smaller public service. We're going to lay off a bunch of nurses, and we're going to lay off a bunch of teachers. And that's a perfectly, from his philosophical point of view, that's what you got to do. My view was it's better to ask the people who are working to take a little less. The problem, of course, is, as I've said again, I'll say it again, Harold Wilson once talked about the Labour Party, and he said, when you have to do difficult things, it's like telling the Salvation Army there's no salvation. I mean, you're making a difficult turn that, to this day, I think there's a number of people who say, how could you possibly have done that? And I fully realized that, and I knew it at the time, that when we decided to do it, and the cabinet agreed and the caucus agreed, and people, they for the most part, came with us. We lost a few, but we never lost our majority. I think it's really, really important to understand it was not an easy choice. But I also knew that we were losing some supporters in doing it. And it proved in the end to be what I call a very good policy choice, which I will defend for a long time. Politically, it was not a great choice.
Well, let me pick up on that. You know Patrick Monahan, who's now a judge. He was a professor at York University, law professor back in the day when he wrote a book called Storming the Pink Palace, in which he called the social contract a political transformation worth noting. He said not only did Bob Rae turn his back on organized labor, but he also rejected the traditional left-wing belief that government deficits and debts don't matter. What made this transformation so remarkable was that it seemed to coincide with a fundamental shift that was taking place around the country, across the country, and indeed throughout the Western world. How do you like that analysis of what you were up to?
Well, I don't think I turned my back on anybody. And I certainly feel that there are a lot of people in the labor movement who understand that, certainly based on my conversations today. But I think it was very hard for some of them to accept it. I accept that. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that affected my own thinking was the fact that during the previous 18 months, I'd spent a lot of time meeting with other premiers because of the constitutional mess we were in and because of the difficulties we faced on that front. And the premiers would get together, all parties, Harcourt, Romano, Rae, people from other parties, Bourassa, Gary Filmon, they crossed the spectrum in all different parts of the country. And we were all facing the same challenge. And we all had candid conversations about it, about what it meant for a province to be in such a substantial deficit position, because we're borrowing on open markets. It affects everybody's credit rating. A reporter once asked me, he says, are you afraid that they'll stop lending you money? I said, no, I'm afraid they're going to keep on lending me money. And that's the reality. I felt we had to get our province on a better footing, on a firmer footing. And by doing that, we would save more public services than if we just kept on borrowing money.
I seem to recall Bob White, the leader of the Auto Workers Union at the time, saying, Bob, for goodness sakes, just give them 50 cents on the dollar and send everybody home.
Well, I don't think he was entirely serious when he said that. I think he was expressing his frustration, but he did say it. And I think it to me, it reflected a kind of thinking that had gone on in Canada for a long time, which was we could keep going in this direction and there would be no price to pay. And my view was, and still is, that any government that doesn't keep its eye on debts and deficits is not doing its job. And that's true whether you're a socialist or a capitalist or a social democrat or a liberal or an NDPer or a conservative. It doesn't matter. There's a limit to how much you can borrow. There's a limit to how much you can spend. There's a limit to how much you can tax. And this is the discipline that every government has to learn. We learned it in a hard way because the downturn in Ontario came so fast and so sudden, And when it came, we went from a modest surplus in '89 to a substantial deficit, real deficit in 1990. And that, at that point, we realized that we had real work to do.
Now that it's a quarter century after the fact, can you let us in on some of what were no doubt incredibly elbows up, brass knuckles discussions in cabinet or in caucus, and maybe share an anecdote or two about how those went, those conversations?
Well, I know this isn't necessarily the conventional view, but the reality is when we really rolled our sleeves up as a government and said we've really got to get at the details of all aspects of spending, we had a caucus meetings for a full 3 or 4 days, nonstop, looking at every item of government expenditure, looking at, and we got full briefings from as many places as we could. Where can we cut? What can we do? What's the best way to do this? And then we had a very full-blown discussion and debate on the social contract. And that was tough, but what was remarkable to me about the caucus was ultimately the solidarity that it expressed. It wasn't enthusiasm, but it was a recognition that in the circumstances it was the better choice.
You had no mass resignations or anything like that.
No, we had some. I mean, but we had a few unhappy souls, but they were unhappy almost from. I mean, they wanted to recount the day after the election. I mean, that's not where they really wanted to be.
But for those who say, and Brian Mulroney loves this line, you got to dance with the ones that brung you. You went after the base of the New Democratic Party, which was the union movement, and you surely must have known there would be a huge political price to pay for that.
I did. I mean, and if I didn't, I certainly learned it. But I knew that to go down this path was fraught with difficulty. And for a political leader to, as I said, to say to his own party and to say to his own political base, I have to do some very, very difficult things. We have to do them. I'm asking for your support. I hope you can provide it to me. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And I want to stress the fact that, I mean, as opposed to a premier who says, well, I got to do what the 2.3 million people who voted for me want to do, actually, I completely disagree with that. I think when you become the Premier of Ontario, you have an obligation to all the people of the province, and you have an obligation to future generations of the province. You have obligations to those who are yet to be born, because you have to take care of the time where you're there. And I know there are people who say, well, look, you brought the province to the edge of bankruptcy. Not true. You created an impossible economic situation. Not true. The situation improved until we were defeated in 1995. We are the fastest growing economy in the OECD in 1995. But you don't always get credit for those things, and politics is all about timing. President Clinton took over in 92, 93.
Good timing.
Good timing. Mr. Chrétien took over in 93. Good timing. I took over in 90. Bad timing. It was tough.
Your finance minister of the day, Floyd Loughran, when I spoke to him shortly, great guy, he'll be on right after this. He said at the time, or I guess shortly afterwards when I talked to him about it back then, he said, good policy, bad politics. He said, we'd have looked politically tougher and better if we just fired tens of thousands of people and enjoyed the savings that way, rather than trying to spread a little pain among a larger number of people. Is he right about that? Could
well be.
He's not saying he wishes he had done that.
No, look, I mean, Floyd Loughran is a dear friend of mine, and was a wonderful, wonderful colleague, and an absolute rock in our cabinet and our caucus. Everybody, I mean, somebody once said about me, he says, trouble with Bob Rae, he doesn't have a populist bone in his body. I probably have one or two, but not that many. And I can be quite stubborn, and sometimes too stubborn. And I did feel that once we'd kind of staked our goal, we couldn't afford to be, blown off course. And I felt very strongly that the philosophically, if you like, or based on the values that we had, and a very important value, I think, for Social Democrats is the value of solidarity. And if there's less to go around, then it's family hold back. And we had no choice, in my view, but to say it's better to give up something to save somebody else's job than it is to say to the younger teacher who's just coming in or the younger nurse who's just coming in, sorry, you're on the lower end of the scale, you're out the door. And I still believe that. And you know, what I find interesting is when President Obama gave his inaugural address in 2008, he talked about the principles of the social contract. Didn't call it, oh, I'm here to talk about Bob Ray's social contract. No, what he did say was, I want to shout out for the steel workers who gave up their jobs in order to save other jobs, because the whole premise of employment insurance today is different. What do you have? Job sharing. It's part of the plan. It's part of the insurance plan.
Okay, you brought up Barack Obama. I want to raise the name of another American politician, Arnold Schwarzenegger. They did this in California. Have you talked to Arnold Schwarzenegger about that ever?
I have. Ironically, I met him once at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, and I joked with him. I said, I'm sure you don't know where you got your furloughs from. And he said, oh, what are you talking about? And I said, no, well, this is what we did. He said, really? He said, very interested. I said, yeah, and it's, for a Democrat to do it, social Democrat to do it, is really tough. And it makes you a short-term premier. But I come back. I mean, when I went into the premiership, it was a surprise. Everybody knows that. And I think everybody, and I felt incredibly lucky to be in office. And then as the world began to unfold around me, I said, this is a tough load to carry. But I really believed that, the test that you need to apply is what you did, building infrastructure, building housing, keeping healthcare strong, and at the same time, providing real efficiencies in terms of public services. And yes, asking people to take less, not firing people, but say to people, share the pain a bit.
Well, in that chair a few days ago was somebody named Andrea Horwath, who is the current leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, a job you once had. And 25 years ago this month, she was a public sector worker in the city of Hamilton. She experienced Ray Days, and she told me in that seat, I thought it was a reasonable way to save my colleagues' jobs. So there we go. I put that on the table for what it's worth. Mr. Ray, we thank you for coming in and sharing your memories of 25 years ago. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.